What is going on with both of these names? It was giving me like fucking Hannah Montana vibes. I'm like, I don't know. Do I out this guy? I don't know. So
No. You're good. We can talk about whatever. I'm an open book.
I know I'm like going into this going like Percy Bluu, Grant Keller, fucking Twitter, X, like so
X.
many names.
I used to get picked on for wearing New Balance, Asics, that kind of shoe. And then kids these days are like, that's what's in. That's the style. I'm like, I got bullied for this. What?
That was so me with Champion, dude. Like wearing
Yes,
Champion.
Champion was another one.
Welcome to Unshut, a place where if at any point you feel like you need to shut the up, don't. How are you doing today?
Doing pretty good. Pretty good.
Is that the actual lighting in your background or is that a filter?
No, that's lighting. I've got like a whole studio set up so I could like change it. So
I love
yeah.
it. I was like, oh, I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Dude, not me finding out just like 2 minutes ago. Basically, me just finding out that you dropped a song today. Literally, I just
Oh
got done
yeah, I
listening
did.
to it.
Yeah, I just dropped a little like music video thing for it, like a little visualizer.
So awesome. Before we start, I want to tell you I've been anxious for this interview with you because I want to get to know, obviously, you a little bit more, but I also want to get a little bit behind your creative process and your creative mind. But I also want to be respectful of the names that you have as an artist, right? But I
Mhm.
wasn't sure what to call you. I'm like, do I call him Grant? Do I call him Percy? Like, I wasn't too sure.
Right. So I am going by Grant, which is my real name. That's my government name. Within the last year, I converted from the regular stuff that I was making, which was like much more hip hop, pop, R&B, that kind of stuff, into country. I fell in love with country last year, and I've grown up in the South my entire life. Never really got into country until this last year.
I love it. No, I love all of the stuff that you've put out so far. But when I found out, obviously to me, like it did make sense, right? It gave me like direction in regards to like this name is for this genre, for this music. He's
Right.
going by Grant to do country, doing it in two different names. And also it still sounds like you, but it's still so different, but they're both so good. So I'm like, I
Yeah.
have to ask him, like, what is going on with both of these names? It was giving me like fucking Hannah Montana vibes. I'm like, I don't know. Do I out this guy? I don't know. So
No. You're good. We can talk about whatever. I'm an open book.
awesome. Well, let's start with the name Percy Bluu. Where did that name
Yeah.
come from?
So originally I make all my own graphic art and that kind of stuff. And a few years ago, I was still trying to come up with like a alias kind of thing to go by. And I was putting my birth year, which is 1996, on cover art. And I was putting the 9 and 6 together. The way that it looks is kind of like a percent sign. So originally I was going by Percy with a percent sign next to it. Then it transitioned into, because I think at the time Apple Music and Spotify didn't recognize a percent sign as a symbol that they would put with an artist name. So I was getting grouped into just Percy. Every artist under the name Percy goes into that. So I ended up changing it to a nickname, which was Dirty Purse. And then from there, it transitioned to Perseus. And then, yeah, so it ultimately ended up with Percy Bluu.
That is awesome. Do you still get people who recognize you by that name and not Grant or both or
A lot of the music people that are in the industry still call me Percy because that's how I was introduced to them. So even like really close friends that know me, know my, like, they know where I live, we just like hang out casually, they'll still call me Percy and be like, "Oh man, sorry, I mean to call you by your regular name."
I love it. What
So
about blue? Where did the name blue come from? Is it from your eyes? Do you have blue eyes?
I do have blue eyes. My birth year, or my birth month, is September, so sapphire. All of it kind of worked out just well like that.
This is like the part that excites me about talking to other creatives because obviously people can go down rabbit holes on social media, and find some little details out. But unless you're hearing it from the artists themselves, like a lot of the things that do make sense or that normally wouldn't be questioned, like you're giving some of that insight. And I love that about this. And you were very intriguing to me because of this. And obviously, like there
Yeah.
are some people who make music who, in my opinion, I wouldn't really consider them artists. They're just music makers, right? Specifically typically people that are overly produced and shit like that, you know? But I think when you start to get into like true artistry, songwriting, their mind is so intriguing, and you were one of them. So for weeks, I'm like, all right, like I cannot wait to deep dive into that.
Yeah, this has been a slow transition over the last, like, I've been making music since I was in sixth grade. So this has not been like a immediate overnight, even in the last few years kind of thing. This has been a slow development. There are some aliases that I would not even put out publicly. It's like growing up. They're like the corniest things ever.
Going back to sixth grade, right? Like, were you writing music then too, or just playing instruments?
I started producing and writing my own songs at 11 ish. So right around that sixth grade mark. I ended up finding like a crack of FL Studio and started making like my own beats, which were awful back in the day. And slowly over time, I taught myself how to do that. Around that time period, there wasn't a lot of tutorials online for that kind of stuff. YouTube, I think, was just kind of starting up. So there was no like real way of learning except from trial and error and kind of teaching yourself. So I started picking that stuff up. I've played instruments throughout my life. So it's all kind of come to me naturally, just over time, been able to hone my craft a little bit.
Have you been able to go back to listen to that stuff that you're like, oh gosh, it was so bad, right? Or even some of the lyrics that you wrote back then and been able to morph them into something in this newer era?
I have not recycled anything from that far back. It depends on what it is, but like some things I can recycle and like change. There's some stuff under the Percy Bluu name that I was going by that I kind of have wanted to maybe turn into what I'm doing now. And it might be something that people see in the future, but for the moment, I haven't been doing a ton of recycling from genre to genre.
This happens to me a lot on the podcast. I'm also, waiting for some solo episodes I'm doing where I'm going to be dropping some like, behind the scenes, things about every episode and some of the artists that I've had. I'm literally like, my hands get so sweaty because this does happen to me a lot on the podcast. And I really do believe in alignment, in following intuition. I believe in just the way the universe kind of works, because one of my questions, which is towards the bottom of my list, was asking, have you thought about taking any songs under Percy Bluu and redoing them in country? And so it's hilarious that you're already touching up on that, because again, my mind and my questions usually come from drawing inspiration from the artist. I try not to over research, too much, because I want things to kind of have a natural flow. But hearing you see that, I'm like covered in goosebumps, because I'm like, this happens a lot where the in sync of the energy is just
right
there. And it's like, how do you explain that,
Yeah, I totally understand that. To answer that question, there are some from Percy Bluu, specifically the later stuff that I was doing, more of the pop stuff that I was working in, that I've wanted to develop into maybe shifting over to country. Actually, one of the songs that is on my page as Grant Keller is one that I released under Percy Bluu, and it just doesn't fit that like name at all. So I shifted it over, and that was the Ghost Town record. I don't know if you got the chance to listen to that one, but
I love it. I love to hear this type of stuff. Yes, it's a great song, by the way. I love the fact that we're deep diving into some of these things that had sparked my curiosity about you. This is why I try to promote telling everyone, like, just follow your gut, do what's instinctual to you, and don't worry about reviews and how bad something's going to be. Just do it, because that is where I believe magic truly forms. But where I want to start off with you is I want to go down the X rabbit hole with you. And here's the thing, I try not to overdo, right? Like that's the way I always say it. I try not to overdo the deep dives.
Sure.
But I still do some digging because I fucking have to,
Yeah, absolutely.
So we're going to go down the X rabbit hole with you, X being formerly known as Twitter.
Yeah.
Okay. I went down from recent to even 2022 timeframe, and I found some tweets that I want to bring up to you that I want to deep dive into with you.
Oh, good. This will be great. I hardly ever use Twitter, so this is gonna be a walk down memory lane for me.
And of course, some of them are deep and serious. Some of them are funny. Some of them I want to add a little spin to them. But, we're just going to go down the list, because
so
I was
curious.
like, because I've done this with a couple of other artists where I've gone down the Twitter rabbit hole to see like what were they posting. And then I just kind of scratched it. And you were the first one that I'm like, let me go down to see what's on X and see. And I'm like, oh, this one's good. Oh, this one's good. Got to do this one. I related to that one. Let's do it. So,
oh, great. All right, let's get it.
You had quoted yourself as being anxious attached. What does
Yes.
that mean to you?
So I have over the last 2 to 3 years been through some pretty shitty relationships. And from that, I had gotten the opportunity to research and look into attachment styles. Which I'm pretty big on now. I went through some attachment healing therapy and some stuff because I just found myself in repetitive cycles of being drawn to really shitty people. I developed, I think, an anxious attached style based on maybe one, how my parents kind of raised me. For anyone that doesn't know, an anxious attached style of relationships is someone that their parents were sometimes there for their emotional needs, sometimes not. And so there's this inconsistency. Both my parents are still married, both my parents are in my life, but it was just, I don't know what it was, especially because it was such a young age that you develop this kind of thing where it's like, I guess I sometimes my emotional needs were met, sometimes I felt neglected. So going all the way back there, yeah, I wouldn't know exactly specific scenarios that helped mold that, but I grew up into a little bit of an anxious attached style, and through therapy and that kind of stuff, I've actually developed a very secure attachment style now. Still have an anxious lean. It's something that you can't control. It's something that you can't completely get rid of because it is your development. But at the same time, it's something that I'm able to like cope with. I've been given the tools to like make my way through that, I guess.
I love that. I know when I read that, I resonated to it a little bit, just in the sense of when I got into the relationship I am now, which is I've only been in one relationship. It's my current one. It's a very healthy relationship. So I like to think, right? I mean, who knows? We'll find out later, I guess. I
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
know.
You can't. It's hard to tell, right?
It's hard to tell when you're in it. No, I'm just kidding. But it's funny because I remember early on when we first started to live together, so many emotions were brought up that I had my therapist basically be like, hey, like, you're not mad at your partner. You're actually mad at your parents. And this is why. Let's kind of work through those feelings. So it's really interesting how those impressions that are left at us at a very young age, we're able to kind of put away for a long time. And then they circle back around when you're in this developed, mature, or what you would like to think it's a mature relationship. So I loved that you were tweeting about this journey and this process because it's so important, especially for men, regardless of sexuality, to know that there are certain things that we weren't necessarily applauded. Is that a word? Applauded?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
We weren't applauded to dig into those feelings. And so when you finally do, the journey is so satisfying. And even now at 34, I am like, I feel the sexiest I've ever felt. I feel the most confident I've ever felt. And it truly did come from therapy and being able to
Yeah.
recognize those qualities that were putting me in this vicious cycle I didn't want to be in anymore. So I love that. I love that you talked about that.
Yeah, and that's what it is it's very cyclical. And so I was very tired of the cyclical nature of the relationships that I was getting into. So I ended up, yeah, seeking help originally through a relationship coach. And then from there, did BetterHelp for a little bit, realized that I still was going through those same cycles of like being drawn to someone that was bad for me. And I was like, something's still missing. So I was doing a lot of research, went through some attachment style therapy kind of thing. And yeah, got out of that.
Do you feel like being aware of those cycles and being aware of those qualities that you wouldn't necessarily call positive about yourself make you better attracting to other people? They make you feel better about who you are?
I think that the awareness of it all was the first step for me because I didn't have the tools to cope with my anxiety. And that was the turning point for me. I sought help because I needed the tools. I recognized that I was in this cycle. I recognized that I was anxious. I recognized that I was seeking people that were the opposite of me, which was very avoidant. They would take on the nature of that parent that maybe was neglectful at the time of your emotions. And I just kept getting into it. And I was like, there's something missing. And it was the tools to cope with my anxiety and to like move to a more secure attachment style, to just be like, look, this is bad for me. I'm leaving this situation, not the other way around, which was like me fighting for the relationship over and over. Yeah.
The next tweet I have, and I'm still going to call them tweets, even though it's X, but I just don't know what to
I
call them
still think of
anymore.
it as Twitter. Yeah, man, they switched it and it's thrown me off.
I know. I'm like going into this, going like Percy Bluu, Grant Keller, fucking Twitter, X, like so
X.
many names. You made a tweet that said attending friend's wedding alone is weird as fuck. And this is where I actually
Oh
got
my.
the idea to pursue doing this with you because ironically, attending an event by myself on Sunday night.
Yeah.
And this morning, I woke up feeling like, oh my gosh, I am about to be so fucking awkward at this event on Sunday because I'm going by myself. And so then I came across that this morning and I'm like, okay, I have to do the Twitter thing with him. So
Yeah, yeah,
tell me
yeah.
about this experience with you. Was it really that awkward?
Well, I mean, I had never been to a wedding by myself before. I've always been either a plus one or had a plus one. And this was the first time in my life that I had been single and was like invited to this wedding. And honestly, if it wasn't for it being one of my closest friends, I would have ditched. But I was like, I have to be there. They're expecting me, all that kind of stuff. So I was like, I'm gonna attend this. I'm gonna push through, whatever. I showed up underdressed, completely like out of place, didn't know a single person there. Honestly, just hang out at the bar. Like I was just taking in alcohol and just started making conversations with people just because it was giving me liquid courage.
You're like, I'm gonna fucking date myself tonight.
Yeah. Oh, I had a great time though. Like I got a little liquor in me. Woo! Got to meet some people, and then I was on the dance floor going crazy.
That's amazing. You also tweeted maturity is hot. And I wanted to ask you, what else does Grant Keller find hot? Maturity cannot be one of them. We already know
Okay.
you find that hot.
Intelligence, a sense of humor. I think that comedy, there's not a lot of things that are off limits for it. If you can bring some dark humor into the equation, I'm a huge fan of just laughing. So it's one of my favorite things to do is laugh and smile. And then the third one would be I'm a Christian, and I would say that that's one of the things that I hold high in my life. So being able to resonate with that with someone else is huge for me.
I love that. And by the way, the order of these, if these are representation of how fucking bipolar I am, this is why, because I don't
Oh,
have them in a
I
specific
don't.
order.
Well, I was gonna say I don't remember at what time I've tweeted these things, so you could be pulling them out of any kind of order, and I'm just like, well, that sounds like something I'd tweet.
Like I'm literally reading them back right now while you're talking, and I'm going, oh fuck, this really does explain my bipolarism like to the T because it goes from like serious to funny to serious to funny. So with that being said, the
Oh, here we
next
go.
one, I know you tweeted about being picked on from like fourth grade all the way through to high school. Would love to know more about that experience from you.
Sure. I mean, I could draw from like real specific things too, because there's things that stuck with me that may not have even been intentional from someone, but it's like the things that they said, I'm still self-conscious about today. Like years later, it's those things that molded you, like that left a footprint for sure. Yeah, I remember being pretty young and starting to recognize that I had like thick eyebrows because people would point it out. And so that was like one of the first like insecurities I remember having was like my eyebrows. And it's so weird for a kid to be thinking about that kind of thing. But it was like I was wearing hand-me-down clothes and someone made a comment about, wow, your jeans are really high on you or something like they could see my ankles. And like ever since then, I had been sagging my pants, like making sure my ankles are covered. Those are small things, but then there was other things in high school where people started getting a little vicious with stuff. One of the instances I remember was being played kind of. There was a girl that was texting me that I thought was a specific person, like saying that they were this person. Come and meet me during this time period. I want to hear you play piano, like that kind of thing. Went to meet with this person. Turns out was not that person. They like set me up to just go in there alone. And it was just like one of those equations where you're like, what happened? And stuff that I didn't feel like I deserved, but it's made me a very self-conscious person. And that, it goes with that anxiety too.
When you go back and revisit some of this, and I had talked about this on the earlier parts of this podcast, which are so cringy, don't recommend anyone looking them up now. It's funny because
now we got to dive into those.
All right, it's time to hang up now. I mean, they're still up there. I will not take them down. But it's funny because I talked about this early on about how certain experiences, we don't talk about them because when you hear yourself talking about them, they almost sound made up.
Or dumb. Like
Yes.
there's those situations where I'm like, yeah, it either sounds like I'm making it up or it sounds like really corny or dumb to me. I'm like, I'm not really that bothered by that situation. And then still can't shake it.
And then you forget that going back into that time, how old you were, what you were going through, how sensitive you were to feelings, how sensitive, like those impressionable years, which even though we're still impressionable as adults, but you carry that shit for so long. And because it sounds silly, because it sounds so minimal, we minimalize those feelings. You go on years without talking about them. So no fucking wonder they affect us, when we're older. Like
It's those little things that just eat at you.
yeah, and it's the littlest things because even now, like I'll hear some of the things that you're saying, and I'm like, well, thank God you didn't turn out to be an ugly dude. I think you're extremely handsome. You were worried about your eyebrows, but yet high-end models like Vogue models, sometimes those features are what make people so attractive, right? So it's like,
Hmm.
we go back into like the early 2000s where people were making their eyebrows so thin, but what's in now? It's like the big bushy eyebrows. That's what's
Hmm.
hot today. Then you go back to like, wearing clothes that were thrifted. What's fucking popular now? Every rich motherfucker wants to
Oh
go
my
thrifting
gosh.
now.
I'm telling you, I used to get picked on for wearing New Balance, Asics, that kind of shoe. And then kids these days are like, that's what's in, that's the style. I'm like, I got bullied for this. What?
That was so me with Champion, dude. Like wearing
Yes, Champion
Champion.
was another one. My little brother was wearing that one time, and I mentioned it to him. I was like, dude, that was not popular. Like I would have been picked on for that.
100%. And it's funny, that was also me with my little brother. It was like a couple of Christmas ago, and he was like wanting to just do all Champion shit. And of course, now Champion is so expensive, but it's like, man, I remember the days where like if you wore Champion to school, people would be like, oh, you shop at Walmart, and I think it really does help. And it's why I appreciate, people like you, people that are vocal about these experiences. It's so good to have them because a 15-year-old can be listening to this podcast one day and they're going to be getting bullied over what they would consider silly. And they're going to be like, well, at least what I'm getting picked on 15 years later is probably going to be what's popular. So it
Mm-hmm.
helps kind of, dim it down a little bit,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah,
So
absolutely.
the next one I have for you is you tweeted a strawberry margarita and my microphone, the only two things I need.
I
So
stand by that tweet. I stand by that tweet.
if we could put some genres, different genres into a different form of drink, what would
Ooh.
a genre be if you did a whiskey and my microphone are the only two things I need?
I mean, country music immediately. Immediately country music.
100%. So it's funny because when I read that tweet, I'm like, whiskey, country, if we could change this tweet, that's the era he's in right now. I love
100%.
it.
Yeah, that's like still tequila, I think, is my favorite, but whiskey is up there for sure.
Where does your mind go if I would have said like a dry martini in a microphone? What genre would that be?
I don't even drink martinis, so I couldn't put it with a genre. I would more so be leaning towards maybe getting into that pop R&B lane, but R&B as soon as I start hitting that, it's cognac or it's a Hennessy or something like that. Like I'm getting into that stuff.
100%. Are margaritas your favorite?
They're a go-to drink that I make here at my house. Like if I'm making a cocktail or something, it's gonna be a margarita, most likely. My girlfriend now, she's a retired bartender, so she's trying to get me into more things. But I didn't start drinking till I was 25, so I'm still in my party phase.
You're like a late bloomer when it came to that.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. No, everybody that I'm partying with just happens to be my brother's age. 21, 22, and I'm like, hey, I'm here, let's go.
Why do you think you started so late? I mean, not that it's a bad thing. Definitely not
Mm,
encouraging everyone to go fucking wild at 21 or under. I'm just
yeah,
curious.
I honestly think that through high school I was a little afraid of my parents and the kind of they were a little stricter with that kind of thing. We were a no alcohol in the family kind of household growing up. So I didn't grow up around it. I had some friends die in like car accidents and stuff from drinking and driving and that kind of stuff. And then I think on top of that, my friend group in high school was not big in parties. So I only went to one high school party ever and didn't drink at that party. It was the weirdest experience ever for a high school party. Everyone else is plastered, smoking, whatever. And I'm just kind of like, this is weird.
What was weirder, that experience or going to the wedding by yourself?
Oh, comparable. They were pretty close just based on the age groups. Weird in high school to not be the one drinking at a party. weird as a single adult where a lot of your friends are getting married to be going to that by
That's
yourself.
funny. When
Two
it
different
came,
experiences, but two very like realistic.
you're like
Like,
two completely different age groups, both so cringy as fuck.
yes, yes.
You also tweeted, "Sorry ain't doing nothing for me." When was the last time someone apologized to you and you were like, "Listen, I forgave you before you needed to apologize, but now that you're apologizing, it still doesn't mean shit to me."
Ooh, probably an X.
Yeah.
Probably an X. Yeah.
Do you feel like knowing that not needing to hear that apology is what's helped develop this relationship that you're in now?
Absolutely. Cause I used to, I used to be like so in like I'm going to prove them wrong stage. I'm going to make them regret this stage. And I did that multiple times through some bad relationships, bad breakups. And now I've just kind of let it go. I'm not going to fight it. I'm not going to expend energy on it. If you want something, like, cool. If it's different than what I want, it is what it is. I'll move on. I've found better. At the end of the day, if it wasn't going to work then, it probably won't work now.
How did you meet your current girlfriend?
We met through Hinge. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Was she the first person you dated off of an online app?
No. My first relationship, which was a 4.5 year long relationship, I met her on Tinder and we were in that very long term. It was even at one point long distance. And we made it work for 2.5 years through long distance, but not the first person I've met on there. And definitely don't regret meeting her on a dating app. I will give Hinge props for that one.
That's amazing. She is so gorgeous, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah, she's great. She's great. All aspects.
When I was going through your Twitter, I'm like, who the fuck picked on this guy? I'm like, he has a great voice. I'm like, he's got a hot girl now. I'm like, fuck those people.
Yeah, for real, for real.
How tall are you? And the reason I'm asking this is because I saw a photo of you on Instagram, obviously, and I saw the size of your hands. And of course, my gay ass was like, how tall is this man? I'm
I
not
am
single.
I'm 5'10".
That's tall.
It's not that tall. Like, I think that's pretty average.
Do you ever tell people you're like 5'11"?
No, I mean, I'm like 6 foot on like any kind of bio thing, right? I'm like close enough. If I wore like implants on my shoes, like I'd be that tall.
There you go. If you were like a good combat boot, that's true.
Yeah, yeah. Somebody sitting down, I might look that tall.
Exactly. I was like, I even told my partner, I was like, I gotta ask this guy how tall he is because his hands were fucking huge. And I showed him, I'll show
What
you the
picture
picture
was
later.
this? Yeah, I gotta know because I'm like, dude, my hands look that big.
Yes, I was like, that's why I'm like, I'm not single. I'm not being extra homosexual for this guy, everyone. I am just, it was an
That's
observation.
hilarious. I gotta know what picture that was.
I'll show it to you right now.
I mean, first off, I didn't even remember getting that picture taken. That was at Barstool in Nashville, filming the music video for my original song that came out, Blow My Money. I think my girlfriend took that picture. Yeah, she took that picture. And I was deep into some drinks at that point.
That's awesome. It's funny because I just by scrolling real quick, I was like, I saw the girl on there, and then I got to that photo and I was like, oh yeah, that's his girlfriend for sure. She's a happy girl.
Yeah, yeah.
Best advice that could come from Grant Keller to anyone who's wanting to try online dating who's never dated online.
Ooh, consistency, I think, is like some kind of perseverance goes a long way with girls, apparently, because my girlfriend didn't actually go on a date with me for like 2 months. She ignored me for like 2 months. We had a good conversation. I got her information. And then, yeah, 2 months, I'm dating other people. Don't get stuck on one person, but when you know, you know. And the line I used for her was something about, I'm going to tell my family I found my future wife. So
And then you went on the first date and then she saw your hands and she was like, I'm in.
yeah, we went golfing. She saw the skill too. And she was like, dang.
Oh, you're into golfing?
Yeah, we went putt putt.
That's awesome.
She was horrible. Don't let her tell you otherwise. She was talking so much shit. I was actually a little concerned before we got there. And then I met with her and we played. And I was like, okay, so you were bluffing, right? And she was like, oh, absolutely. I was like, whew.
Something that I find so cool is on a first date, when someone's able to shoot the shit with you, it
Oh
doesn't
yeah.
only just set the tone to your relationship, but it also says a lot about that person. To me, it says security. And that also says a lot about the other person because you're obviously making her feel comfortable enough to shoot the shit with you, you know?
Oh, absolutely. And look, that's one of those qualities that I look for in a individual that I'm like going out on a date with or something. Like they have to be able to do that. If they can't be competitive, if they can't be playful, it's not going to work. That's who I am in my regular day-to-day life. So I knew that going into it. I was like, this girl better either bring some heat or she better talk her shit.
What does she think about your music?
She loves it. Yeah. I think
Is
that's the
there,
right answer for her to say too.
before she catches them big hints? I'm just kidding.
No, you know what's great is she's a very country girl, farm
Nice.
raised girl, and me getting into country and everything. Like I didn't grow up doing a lot of that stuff. And so it's been kind of a wild experience. She'll say some terms that I've never heard before and be like, you're going to have to break that down for me. I came from Memphis. I live in Memphis. This is not what I'm accustomed to. And so, yeah, she's great all around, really solid character, great person, just in general.
When it comes to dating, how early on do you talk about your music to them?
I think that she actually knew about it prior because we followed each other on Snapchat originally, and I posted something about it because I'm just gonna publicly post about my music. It doesn't matter who you are, what you're doing. Like I'm putting that out there for me. And she ended up seeing it and was like, this is actually really good, blah blah blah. I mean, I'll put out that I make music, but I don't really like push it in front of people. Even when somebody comes up and they're like complimenting me about something, it's weird. It's a weird interaction because I want to say thank you, but then I don't know what else to say. So, and it was hard to say thank you for a long time too. That's something you kind of have to grow into as an artist and be confident enough to be like, oh yeah, thanks, I appreciate it. Like, been doing this a long time. I still don't know what
Yeah.
else to say.
I mean, I kind of see that too. And obviously, like, it's not the same at all, right? But even with podcasting, like, I'll go somewhere and I'll run into someone I haven't talked to in months, right? And they'll be like, oh, I like your podcast. I'm tuning in every week. There's also a big part of me that's kind of like, fuck off. No, you're not. But that's
Mhm.
also coming from an insecure place because it's like, I don't want
Right.
to acknowledge it and be like, oh, thank you so much for listening to my podcast, right? Because you think it sounds cringy to acknowledge that it's good enough for someone to enjoy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever been turned down or been like shut down from someone who was not impressed by your music? A potential date or girl?
Not potential date or girl, but my parents are not like super expressive about what they think of my music, especially being in a Christian household and making some of the previous music I've made. My parents immediately kind of tune out. One, they hear it all the time. I'm blasting it in my room or something like that. They're down in the kitchen, they can hear it. But then at the same time, I don't hold back on swearing and stuff. I don't necessarily have the same perspective as other people on that. And my parents have a very, I would say, legalistic view of that within their religion. So that is one of those uncomfortable conversations I have with them every once in a while, where I'm trying to show them something that I'm really proud of. And it doesn't hold up to the same as if like my brother, he's in the Navy. They're really proud of him for that. My sister, she's a hairstylist. She's been doing that for years and is great. Both of them have moved on with their lives and they're outside of my parents' reach a little bit. And so my parents are much more receptive to the things that they do. So it's kind of a sore subject on that sometimes.
No, but it's very true and it's very authentic and honest. And I feel like that is something I'm sure so many people can relate to it because, you know, as much as people like to say, like, we don't always do everything to make other people proud or make other people happy. But I know that something I have learned through this journey is, and first of all, I want to say, like, I'm sorry that you have to feel that way, specifically with your parents, right? And for
Mm,
everyone hearing, like, it doesn't make your parents bad parents, right? They're set on their ways, they're set in what they believe in. And then you have to also grow to respect that, right? And on my end, my mom is very supportive. My dad is very supportive creatively. When I was a choreographer, now that I'm pursuing podcasting, they're very supportive. But it has also become a very almost a weekly topic in my household with my partner when we talk about how it can be so hurtful when the way I congratulate people now that I'm pursuing something new, they're so silent. They don't have anything to say, not even a, hey, podcasting is not for me, but it's awesome that you're doing it. No
yeah.
acknowledgement at all. It makes me fucking sad sometimes, you know?
Yeah, it's gotten to the point where I don't really bring that stuff to my parents anymore. I'm kind of like doing my own thing. I'm passionate about this. This is what makes me happy. I know based on the stuff that I've made and the stuff where I'm heading, I know where my destination is. and I'm confident that I'm getting there. It's just not something that I bring up to my parents because it is a little disheartening. It's something that I grew up jealous of my friends that were like, yeah, my parents loved this thing that I did and blah, blah, blah. So I roll with the punches on that one, I guess.
Yeah, but you know what? That's how I also know, and even in my experience with choreography, it's that is where the biggest rewards come from. Because
Mhm.
when you're able to go against the current, the currents that hurt the most, right? I mean, people are going to say what they want online, right? They'll call people fat, ugly, they'll do all these things online, right? And of course, that trolling can be hurtful. It's a little deeper when that rejection's coming from people that you love and respect.
Yeah.
But if you're able to go against that current, that's where, in my opinion, the biggest rewards come. Interestingly enough, how we got on this subject very organically. I'm very grateful for that because just before getting on this call, you posted something on your Instagram story where someone was, talking about the pursuit of happiness. And I'm not blanking out, but I also don't want to misquote. Do you know what post I'm talking about?
Was it today or was it
It was.
yesterday? Okay,
It was
today
today.
there was one that was talking about I'm double checking too now. There was a support your friends and stop hating on them from afar. Is it that one or is it
I think it was like these two guys
Oh, it was
talking.
it was John Kilmer. Yeah, it was John Kilmer
Yes.
talking about the only difference that separates successful people from the unsuccessful people is that constant perseverance, like just not quitting, because that's what's going to separate a successful person from a unsuccessful person, right? And differences in success, that's a complete internal thing. You can be successful and not be rich. You can be successful and not be the most notoriety or have the most notoriety. You can be successful in all these areas, but you're not unsuccessful. The only unsuccessful people are the people that quit.
1000%. I don't second guess what I'm doing on a daily or weekly basis, right? Putting out content, putting out videos that I make for certain artists or guests or things that I do outside of podcasting. Sometimes it can suck when it doesn't get the love that you put love into it. And so
Mhm.
on almost on a weekly basis, I go through the feelings of like, man, no wonder people throw in the towel so fucking early because here I'm posting a video that's getting fucking 15,000 likes and views. And then I'll
Mhm.
post this guest and it's like, oh, they're getting 500. And I'm like, it pisses me off because I'm like, it's not about just supporting that guest. It's about also supporting my platform and what I'm doing. So when,
Sure.
you know what I mean? And so you go through these, emotions of constantly having to deal with like, fuck, like it's so easy to just throw in the towel. So I saw that post that you made today and I'm like, fuck yes. Like I resonated with that so much because on a weekly basis, you go through that. And I'm sure with you as a recording artist, you go through those same emotions.
Man, there's been many times where I wanted to throw in the towel. There's been many times, even times that I thought I was quitting, I just came back around to it. This is what I love to do. And whether or not I'm successful in other people's eyes, like I love making music. There will not be a day of my life where I'm not still pursuing this. Like this
What
is my purpose. I know that.
How old were you when you realized that you had not necessarily the talent? Because when you're young, you don't know that it's a talent, right? Or it's a
Yeah, you
gift.
have to kind of hone that
Exactly. How far back can you go back into realizing that you had a gift with your voice?
with my voice. Hmm.
Because I know what I fucking sound like when I talk and hear myself back, and I'm like, oh, I sound gayer than I thought, you know?
Uh-huh.
But as a recording artist, like, at what point do you remember hearing yourself back singing and you were like, wow, like that came out of me?
I think that it's hard to see it how other people see it because I'm very nitpicky about my music and I'm constantly trying to get better. I mix all this music in my house. I make it all from home. I don't have a team around me like that. I've got a couple people that shoot my videos and that kind of stuff, but it's really me at the end of the day. And I don't know if there was a moment where I've been like amazed at my singing, right? Especially when I do a cover, for example, that one that I released today. It's Morgan Wallen's song. So everything that's not him singing it is not going to sound right. I don't know. I definitely can recognize that I'm talented in it. I don't think that I'm the best. And I'm constantly going to be pursuing getting better at it. So
Yeah.
there is that little bit of a disconnect between how I view myself and how others may view me, especially because I see the behind the scenes and like the blood, sweat, and tears that's going into this, like sometimes literal tears.
Yeah.
So like
Yeah.
this is a stressful situation to be in. So it comes down to that. I think I can't necessarily say that there's a time in my life where I've been blown away at my performance.
To me, the fact that you even wrote me back, it's still so surreal. Only writing people that I truly love their music. So
Mhm.
even getting a, hey, not right now, no, thank you, to me, I'm still like, fuck yeah, I got a response, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But, so for you, I'm like, when you see those streaming numbers, when you also get an email from someone that just discovered your music and it's like they're so in love, what do you feel?
For that in particular, I feel like because that song has been out for a long time, I've seen the growth and it's been very slow. It's been constant, but it's been very slow. And so I don't think it has the same wow factor for me. I mean, I had it for a long time before I even released it. Then I released it. By the time I release music, half the time I'm tired of it already because I've heard it so many times, which is such a weird space to be in. People are like, you got to promote your stuff. You got to promote your stuff. And then I'm like, I want to promote this other one that I just started working on. It's so much better. Like,
Yeah.
so I'm kind of in that space, but I'm humbled by how it's been received. That's one of the highs for me that I've been chasing. I've not had another original song do that well. And so that's a constant high that I'm chasing for streams and numbers and that kind of thing if we get into the nitty gritty of it. But every single song that I've put out is something that I've loved. So they're all kind of like my babies, even though that one did so well. The other ones are like other ones that I've cultivated. I worked on just as hard, if not harder. So even the songs that flopped, some of my favorites.
Yeah. And I love hearing you say that too, because I think the interesting perspective about this, and this is something I thought about a while ago with one of my first guests, which oddly enough, her last name is Keller also. That's
As my
crazy.
middle name, so it
Oh,
doesn't count.
interesting.
Doesn't count.
Okay, scratch that, scratch that. But it's so funny because, we had talked about like, the hundreds of thousands streams that she got, and then she'll post this new one and it's like, at under 10,000 or something. But looking at it from a bigger picture, if you look at some of the most successful artists of our time, they go through that. It's just at a different extreme. The
Mhm.
numbers are different, but the pattern is still there. Like Lady Gaga, for example, who is fucking Lady Gaga, but when she tried doing like a rock pop album that had the lowest numbers it had, but guess what? She's still fucking Lady Gaga, you know?
Yeah. I feel like just as you become more successful, that ceiling gets higher. You never reach it, but you're constantly chasing that next big thing. And it's one of those weird things where as I've gotten more and more streams throughout my time period, I'm also like chasing more. Everything in scale now because of that one, it feels like it's flopped if it only did a couple 100,000 or yeah, like just smaller numbers. You're like, dang, it had so much more potential. Like,
Yeah, I relate to this with podcasting too. I pay attention to numbers of streams. How many streams does it get on the first day? How many streams does it have by the end of the week, by the end of the month? I pay attention to that. I've learned to let go of the feelings that it comes when an episode is not doing so well, right? I have to constantly remind myself, bitch, who did you put that episode out for? You put it
yeah.
out because you loved their music, you loved who they were. So you put this episode out for you. And I had to learn that very early on. I love to hear, especially artists like you talk about that because yes, the ceiling is constantly getting higher, but that passion that went into your first project or the one that you would consider the most successful is the same passion that's going into your newer stuff, you know?
Yeah, all this is like different time periods where that song when I wrote it meant so much to me and like it holds value to me whether or not it did well. And every single one of these songs, I was in some kind of mood, I was in some sort of headspace that just formulated into that. I don't know how to describe it other than I'm just pulling from that space. And it's like a moment in time that I've like got a capsule for.
I will also say this just so that it also stays on record. If there's ever any self doubt, if there's ever any like, oh, you're just not really feeling it, you can also come back into this episode and hear that I fucking said, I
Yeah.
think you're the shit. I love your voice in country. I love it in R&B. I love it in pop. I think you can get away with fucking rock. Like there's so much that I'm like, man, like both genres under Percy and under Grant, I'm like fucking genius, you
Thank
know?
you. Thank
Of
you. Yeah.
course.
That's one thing that I take pride in. Every genre that I've done well. And I know I've done well. I could make it as a pop artist. I could make it as a whatever. But right now, country is where I'm at. I love country. I can see myself being a country artist forever. Like just really enjoy it. I think that it's always gonna be a crossover of other genres though. I do enjoy other ones too much. But I can make it as a
Yeah.
writer. Everyone's told me writing I could do it.
No, 100%. I love this because it's the way it should be. Right before I launched the podcast, I went down this stupid rabbit hole of looking at unsolicited advice from people, blogs and shit. And one of the things that I remember reading the week before I launched my first episode was don't try to do a podcast where you talk about all. Stick to one
Oh yeah.
subject and only stick to that subject. And I remember immediately I felt so discouraged because I had already had, things lined up for it. And I'm like, damn, I'm kind of doing of all. And I just remember having to go through the emotions of, no, like, fuck that. A hundred
Yeah.
thousand people are going to be taking in that advice. So I'm going to not listen to that advice and just grab it and run with it. And I feel like that's the way it should be with artists like you too. Why should you just stick to one genre?
Mm.
Explore all of them.
I've explored, yeah, exactly. I've explored all of them. The ones that I get inspiration for, I'll write for. Like I might end up passing that along to another artist at some point. It may not be something that fits me, but I'm inspired. I'm gonna do something with that. I don't want to just throw it away. Inspiration is so fleeting for this stuff. I just have to get it somewhere. It's got to be somewhere.
Absolutely. And I love Blow My Money, by the way. It's so fucking
Thank you.
good. It's
Thank
so
you.
good. Did you
Yeah.
have fun with that project?
Woo, yeah, that was best, most fun I've had on something to date. I got to bring all my friends out to Nashville with me. We got an Airbnb, went crazy for the night, got to go to Barstool, got hooked up with VIP. We ended up going to the old Smoky Distillery in Nashville, shooting some scenes there. It was a great trip. And then, yeah, all of it came together. I edited the video for it. It's been a long process, but I think that one's one that has so much potential, and I just got to get the exposure for that one. Like, just the right people have to see it.
I keep saying this a lot today, and I'm like, fuck, I should take a shot for all the times I hear this because I'm like, I
Oh, we should
love
do that.
hearing you say that.
I'm like
Exactly.
looking over at my liquor cabinet.
I'm like, I love hearing you say that because I know for me, like that really transcended into that project. When I heard it, I'm like, he had a fucking fun with this one. I can tell. Obviously, it's a cheesy question to be like, did you have fun with your project? I heard it, I saw the visual, and I'm like, it really did like project to what
Oh
I
yeah.
think you were trying to project, you
Oh,
know?
I had a blast. It wasn't even like a here, look how much fun I'm having. Like I was just having fun. I completely you kind of blank out that you're even making a video. A lot of that stuff in that video was B-roll. Like we were just going out having fun. I told everybody before we went, like, even though it is kind of a business trip, I want everybody to have fun. So let's just go wild. And then whatever we capture, we capture. If we miss some stuff, oh well, we'll make it work. So that project came out really fun. And then the other thing I was going to mention is that one particularly is like a party song, right? So you do capture that fun element of it, but there's other songs that are like maybe more sad or something like that. You capture the moment of those too, whether it's in a video or not. Like I love it because I am capturing these different moments, snapshots of where I'm at or what I'm doing. And Blow My Money was a record that I put together when I was intoxicated. So it makes sense. The whole thing was about alcohol. And I
That's
don't know if you
funny.
caught it or anyone else caught it, but I'm going to say it here on record. That song is not about a girl. It's not about a girl. The whole song is about whiskey and tequila, my two favorites, which I mentioned earlier.
That is awesome. It's so crazy too, because as a listener, and I'm not musically trained at all. I don't play instruments. No one wants to hear me sing. I'll get canceled very quickly. Choreography is the only thing, closest that I ever get to music. And I remember listening to this record and I remember thinking like, man, if we were to strip that and do acoustic, turn it into a ballad, I'm like, it really can go in every fucking direction. And I loved that about that record.
Yeah, it's one of those records that is genre bending a little bit because it's got hip hop, it's got country, it's got pop. And that's one of those things where the girl that I had previously seen back this year when we were together, she was very like, oh, I only like country a particular way. There was a song that's not released yet. It's coming out called Forgiveness that I wrote about our situation and showed it to her. And it was kind of discouraging at first. It's one of my first country songs that I've written, really poured my heart into it. And she was like, yeah, it just doesn't make me feel anything. And I was like, I think she's just trying to be a bitch. Like looking back at it, I'm like, what the hell? Because that's one of my favorite songs I've ever written. And it's also one that everyone else is going to love. I know everyone's going to love it, but I really did like Blow My Money. It's got a little bit of me in every aspect, little country, little hip hop. it's good for everybody.
I
So I think
love
that's why
it.
it resonates. Yeah.
Well, and to the current girlfriend listening, what I got from that message was he had bad taste back then. She was shitty. She had, he's on the right track
Absolutely.
now.
Absolutely.
What can you tell us about Made for Montana? I know you recently posted, I think you
Ooh.
said something about March 15th,
Yep.
right?
Yep. Made for Montana. This is going to be a very dramatic shift from Blow My Money. This song is much more into the country scene. I was brought this idea by my friend Hannah. Hannah is one of my friends that I write with. Just now kind of being introduced into co-writing, so it's been a little interesting dynamic, but she approached me with this idea for the title of the song, which is Made for Montana, and she was like, I've got this idea of, you know, this girl that's made for Montana. And so that's what the whole song's about, is this girl, you could take her out of Montana, she's made for it though, like she's going to get back there. The whole song has that essence of she doesn't really need me, she's doing her own thing, she's got dust on her jeans, like she's going crazy up there and doesn't need another life. It's simple and sweet out here. We love it. So yeah, this one's going to fit much more into the country vibe, and I'm excited for it.
Is she singing in it also, or just co-writing it with you?
She just wrote it with me. Yeah, she approached me with the idea. We wrote it in, I think, at night, just like a couple hours, and then over the last, gosh, we wrote it back in maybe November, October, and over the last several months, I've just been grinding to get it done. And I actually had a couple others lined up previously. And she was like, we got to do this one next. We got to do this one next. And I was like, all right, I'll move it to the front of the queue. We're doing this one next.
And that's the way magic should happen. I get so excited hearing these details because I also look at it from the creative perspective of like, fuck, like now it's also you're co-writing from a female's perspective, but it's going to be in a male voice. And to me, that's the shit that excites me. I'm like, those creative moments of the process is what really fucking makes me wet. I'm like, I live for those moments.
I love it. Yeah, this one's great. This Hannah's a genius. She came to me with that idea, and we just molded it into like this great song. It still looks, from my perspective, from the outside in, but it's like I'm looking into her world and all these things that I can come to love too. It's talking about, you know, you can take me and make me forget who I am, what I'm made of because of what you are, and that I think is a beautiful thing too.
I love it. And can you just remind everyone when that song is to be expected to drop?
I believe March 15th. I gotta double check. I'm horrible. Yeah, March 15th. That's coming out. March 15th, 2024. Really excited for it. Pre-saves are in all of my social bios, and yeah, you can catch it there. And we might have another few goodies before it comes out, but
I'm super excited for everything that you're doing. I still get nervous when I hop on these calls with anyone because I'm like, you just never know how they're going to go. But I love that you bounced around with me on topics. And I think this is just a good message to anyone listening who is even wanting to consider coming on. Quality of the episodes aren't always just on me, right? The magic also comes from the creative that's on the other side of the screen too. And I think you brought that magic. I'm like so excited to drop this episode because if people can see the magic that I'm fucking feeling on these episodes, I cannot wait to see what you're doing even a month from now. So
yeah, what's next? You know,
exactly.
I appreciate you having me on here. This was one of my first podcast interview things ever, so you made it a great one.
I appreciate that. It helps to be good looking, have big hands, and you know.
Oh yeah, you know, my giant hand. Yeah.
So listen, so if you don't want to stream his music, stream the episode and stream his music because you're into big hands. So
yeah, do it for that reason. Sure.
Exactly. Listen,
thanks a lot, man. I appreciate it.
No, for sure. I appreciate you. Thank you for giving me your time as well. I love it. I'll be in touch. So before we wrap it up, tell everyone where to find you, where they can stalk your life in your hands. Let's wrap it up.
Yeah, on Instagram, it's Grant Keller Music, YouTube, Grant Keller Music, Twitter or X, Grant Keller, but with 3 R's. Everywhere else, I'm trying to get it just Grant Keller Music.
Amazing. Yeah. Thank you so much, Grant. It's been great talking with you.
And thanks everybody for listening. Appreciate y'all.
Hey, if you've made it this far, don't forget to follow the socials on the screen or in the description below. See you next week.